So I was basically browsing through YouTube today, especially after watching, watching my video that I did, my audio video that I did, talking about, Sally and Nicole, and, basically talking about what AWF brought up there. And as I was browsing through YouTube, watching it, as well as watching the video that I linked at the end of that one, which was to Jawbreaker's Gone with the Fur Theater discussion that he did about almost 5 years ago, which will be this July, which was actually 5 years ago when I did my initial thoughts on the whole Sally and Nicole lesbian thing. And the more I was browsing, the more I noticed a lot of the videos where I talked about Sally and Nicole and the relationship, not just as potential, LGBTQ lovers or anything like that, but mainly the fact that there was a lot of discussion going on, especially with the fact that, as I've mentioned before, this month here officially began the start towards what would be known as the Mecca Sally arc. Yeah, it's been almost 10 years. It'll be 10 years this October, November, if you will, when that arc began. And honestly, it's an arc that a lot of people have found to be very controversial. Some have liked it, some didn't. Some felt it was unnecessary, things like that. Some felt that there was just stuff about it that, even though potentially looked good, sounded good, felt like it could lead to something, just in the end didn't, in the end just ended up being, nothing of what they would expect or what they felt should be or what they could have led to and things. But like I said, getting back on topic, when I was browsing through YouTube, like I said, I noticed a lot of the videos that not only I did, but I'm sure others have done as well, or at least some of the theories they came up with as well. And one of the theories that some people came up with when it came to Sally and Nicole, and it was a video I did about 9 years ago this August, according to the date, I talked about the potential of issue 230. Now, issue 230 was basically the issue where at the end of the issue we saw what happened to Sally. She ended up sacrificing herself and thus became Mecca Sally. But before that, a lot of people were wondering exactly, what the initial cover was alluding to, because you had, Sally like in some kind of angelical, like, I guess you could say angelical like pose, if you will. You had Sally in some kind of angelical like pose, greater than thou pose, if you will. And little did we know that meant she was going to sacrifice herself. Little did we know. But for me, one of the theories I came up with, and I think others were talking about this as well. Others were talking about this as well. But one of the theories that I discussed was whether or not 230 was going to see the potential merger, if you will, fusion, if you will, of Sally and Nicole into one. Because when you looked at that cover, it just gave off that vibe. It just gave off that vibe. And by the way, I'm not going to be showing the cover here. It's just going to be this one picture or so I do apologize. I will video link when I'm talking about, at the end of the video. Here, so you could check out the video that I'm talking about right now. But anyway, sorry if I sound a little convoluted there. But anyway, like I said, there was a lot of theories as to what that cover was alluding to for 230, and one of them, like I said, in my opinion, from what I read, from what others were speculating, was the possibility that we could see Sally and Nicole fuse together into one, merge together into one to help save the day, to help destroy the Death Egg. And of course, unfortunately, like I said, we know exactly what that cover was really meaning. That, basically it was, their way of saying that Sally was going to sacrifice herself. And, that's exactly what happened. But it wasn't the only discussion that I came up with and others have talked about and even, asked about as well. One other discussion and topic and question they were asking about when it came to Sally and Nicole was whether or not Ian Flynn made them look like idiots. Because honestly, folks, I'm not the only one that thought about this. I mean, the moment Sally had Nicole redirect the laser, the roboticizing laser on her area, in her directive, or in her direction, a lot of people, a lot of fans, including myself, we were like, well, wait a minute, why don't you just have Nicole have the cannon aimed towards the side of the ship and then have it blast into the sky, basically hitting nothing, potentially. Why not have her do that? Thus, you don't have to have yourself sacrificed. And when a lot of us were talking about that and bringing it up, we were all thinking to ourselves, and asking ourselves, did Ian Flynn make these two look like idiots? Did he make them look like idiots? Now, again, no, not again, but let me say this. Let me say this. What I'm trying to say is, let me say this. I understand, as I've mentioned many times before, that people have a right to their opinions. And everybody has defended the fact that this was done, in the right way. This was done in a very tasteful way to help redeem Sally. Even Ian Flynn, kind of backed that up. But, with that said, it still made people wonder whether or not Ian Flynn, could have wrote Sally and Nicole a lot better when it came to that kind of a situation. Because to a lot of people, even though they can understand the defense that Ian has on it, as well as others have had on it, it still basically felt like, Ian was portraying them as idiots. Like, hey, you have Nicole in your hands, communicate to Sonic where you are so he could come and get you before that blast hits and prevent you from being roboticized. Or have Nicole basically redirect the cannon to the side of the ship, just basically blast into the day's sky, into the daytime sky, and hit nothing potentially. I mean, here's the thing about this. Crystal Maiden 77. And I read what she had to say. I read off what she had to say about a year or so ago in a recent video. But Crystal Maiden 77 basically said it best. You have all these other characters that are, specially equipped to handle certain situations. And yet you don't have Sally think, hey, maybe I should bring one of them with me. Or maybe I should bring some of them with me so they could take care of certain areas of the Death Egg, especially when it comes to the global roboticizer, so that I don't sacrifice myself. And that kind of connects to the question of, did he make them look like idiots, that being Sally and Nicole? And here's the thing, it wasn't the only thing that got us talking when it came to these two. Again, one of the things that got people talking, especially when they saw that, issue of 230 and even 231's, issue, solicit cover with the silhouette of, a potential robot. A lot of people were thinking, like with 230, was Nicole going to sacrifice herself? I talked about that. Others talked about that. Others were thinking, would he do it? And then when we saw this, cover, the silhouette on the cover for 231, a lot of us pretty much assumed that could be what we feared. But we were hoping not. But yet it was. The thing is, when it comes to Sally and Nicole, especially when it came to, looking back almost now 10 years to the start of the Mecha Sally arc, when you look back at this couple, not this couple, but these two, it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird to think that, they will basically put front and center, especially towards the end, of this 225 story arc that would lead into the Mecha Sally arc. They were basically in the center of it, because every time you would read a synopsis, a solicit, if you will, of what the issue was going to be like, it got you wondering, could this happen? Will that happen? What does this mean? What are they talking about? And most of the time when you would ask those questions, you'd be mainly asking, about Sally and Nicole when it came to it. You'd be wondering, well, what does this mean for Sally and Nicole? What does that mean for Sally and Nicole? What are they alluding to when it comes to Sally and Nicole? It kept you asking about what would pertain to them, because of course, Sonic being Sonic, Sega was not going to let anything happen to him. But in the end, we all know what happened. But this is the one thing about Sally and Nicole and the relationship as BFFs, and whether or not you potentially look at them as being more than that. This is one of the things about Sally and Nicole's relationship, that people like, because when they get put into storylines, even storylines that basically lead into things that other storylines, I should say, that are controversial. It shows you that they're very popular with the fans, because fans are always wondering, okay, what's next for them? Are they alluding to Nicole? Are they alluding to Sally? Is this going to happen? Is that going to happen? It shows you the popularity. And even afterwards, with Ian Flynn in his first podcast of the Bumblecast, coming out and saying, yeah, there were plans to go with Sally and Nicole as a couple, but the only thing holding it back was the behind the scenes politics, and the fact that all fans had always associated Sonic with Sally. But it's just one of those situations. It's just one of those situations to where, it really makes you just sit back and really think and just, be in wonder of how popular these two are as BFFs, not just as characters, but as BFFs, and potentially in the eyes of some, maybe even more. But yeah, the videos that I mentioned, I'm going to link at the end here so you guys can check them out. But yeah, just Sally and Nicole's relationship, shows you, how much basically, it shows you how much fans appreciate them, especially when it comes to discussing, what the, roles will be when it comes to certain things like what took place 10 years ago. But what do you guys think? What are your thoughts overall? Let me know in the live chat during the premiere, as well as in the comments section below, and I will talk to y'all later.